Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to the final day of ACCA's Practice to Pass session for subject performance management with me, Shehan Fernando. So we directly start off with the point where we stopped yesterday. So that is, we have two areas of section B of the syllabus left, that is risk and uncertainty and relevant costing, and section A, which is left, which is, of course, not going to take too much of time today because section A, as you and I know, we will only focus on section A and section B questions. Okay, right. So relevant costing is the first thing that I'm looking at. What are the relevant costing principles? And under this, we have four sub areas: make versus buy decisions, shutdown decisions, one-off contracts, joint products, that is for further processing decisions, etc. Right. So the relevant costing principles. So you have to take future incremental cash flows, take the avoidable cost and the opportunity cost, exclude non-cash flow items such as depreciation and notional cost. Other costs such as committed cost, sunk cost, unavoidable cost, fixed overheads, financing cash flows, or interest should be excluded. So in terms of a make or buy, how do you decide on make or buy? You have to go for the cheaper option of the two. Okay. So look at future incremental cash flows. Watch out for opportunity cost, especially whether or not spare capacity exists and alternative uses for capacity. So especially in terms of material and labor. Okay. More importantly, labor. Okay. They regularly test that. Okay. So the contribution lost has to be taken into account. Practical factors is also another thing that we must look at. Sometimes the calculation says we can go with make or buy, but then again, or probably we can go with a buy out of the make, but then again, sometimes it's a little impractical, okay, to go with the buy option based on non-financial aspects, okay, right. So moving on, shutdown decisions, okay. So we have to look at the future incremental cash flows. The apportioned overheads are not relevant. Closure costs, redundancies, take that into account because if you're shutting down, the alternative use of resources, and there's a knock-on impact. What is this knock-on impact? Knock-on impact is where, for example, McDonald's decides to not or remove from their menu the kids meal. So the knock-on impact can come in the form of a situation where a family decides not to go to McDonald's because of the inavailability of the kids meal. So generally, if a family ends up at McDonald's, okay, so probably let's say the mom, the dad, uh, a 4-year-old kid or a 5-year-old kid, and probably a 9-year-old kid. So the 9-year-old kid probably might not want the kids' meal, but can never say. I'm sure there are certain people who is listening to me right now who want the kids' meal as well. Okay, but generally the 9-year-old kid will not want the kids' meal. So you're looking at three adult meals and a kids meal, okay, being sold together. But probably there the decision maker was the little fellow who said, let's go to McDonald's. So knock-on impact talks about, yeah, if I am discontinuing the kids meal, okay, there is a possibility and a revenue reduction which can come in through the other adult meals as well. So aspects like that is uh, what we mention as knock-on impact. So then there again can be certain other practical or non-financial factors. So we move on joint products, the further processing decision. So look at future incremental cash flows, that is sell at the split off point versus or probably are you going to further process. Okay. So, and also make sure you know how to split the joint cost, okay, among the products. F2 would have taught you this as well, or FMA in the knowledge level. We have NRV method sales value method. I sort of prefer to call the two the same because it's based on same principles. Or ideally, a more easier approach, the quantity method. So on that note, we go to High Life Company, December 2014. Okay. So can you go to page number 7 on the PDF? There you are. From December 2014. So I can probably do this over here as well. Okay. Uh, Let me take the requirement also. The requirement of High Life companies prepare on a relevant cost basis the lowest cost estimate, which could be used as the basis for the quotation. Explain briefly your reasons for including or excluding each of the cost in your estimate. Okay. So I'm going to tell you the relevant cost and do the necessary calculations. The reasoning we will discuss, but I'm not going to take down. Just telling you how the procedure is going to be. Right. So on that note, let's start. Okay. The High Life company makes sofas. It has recently received a request from the customer to provide a one-off order of sofas in excess of the normal budgeted production. The order would need to be completed within 2 weeks. The following cost estimate has already been prepared. Direct material, fabric, wood. Then there's direct labor, skilled, semi-skilled, factory overheads, total production cost, admin overheads of 10%, and the total cost. So then they are talking about each of these one by one, okay? And they want you to come up with the relevant cost, okay? Fine. So let's take it one by one. In terms of fabric, we are talking about 200 square meters, okay, at 17 per square meter. That's what the question has taken, or the estimate has taken. The fabric is regularly used, okay, and 300 square meters, which cost 17, okay. There's currently 300 square meters, which cost 17. The current purchase price of the fabric is 1750. So in a situation where the material is regularly used, you need to get the replacement cost. So if I'm to buy it today, it's 1750. So if I'm to buy it today, just a second, messed up a little. It is a 1750. So therefore my relevant cost in terms of material is going to be, or fabric, 217.5, 3500. Wood. What about wood? We need 50 meters, 8.2. This type of wood is regularly used by HL and usually costs 8.2 per square meter. However, the company's current supplier's earliest delivery time for the wood is in 3 weeks' time. An alternative supplier could deliver immediately but would charge 8.5 per square meter. HL company already has 500 square meters in inventory, but 480 of this is needed to complete other existing orders in 2 weeks. The remaining 20 square meters is not going to be needed until 4 weeks' time. Okay, right. So now we need 50 square meters. We have 500, but from the 500, I need 480 within the next 2 weeks. Okay. So ideally, this order also needs to be completed in 2 weeks. Okay. So which means I cannot take this 480, but I can take a 20. Or can I take the 20? The remaining 20 is not going to be needed until 4 weeks time. Okay, I can take the 20 assuming I will order some material and that usually comes in 3 weeks. So I can actually take the 20 and still manage. So if I'm to take that 20 will go at 8.2. Okay. So 8.2 into 20 plus I need another 30, 8.5 into 30. 164 plus 255, which ends up giving me a value of 419. Note number 3, skilled labor. Skilled labor force is employed under permanent contracts of employment which they must be paid for 40 hours per week. Even if their time is idle due to absence of orders, their rate of pay is 16 per hour. Although any overtime is paid at time and a half, in the next 2 weeks, there is spare capacity of 150 hours. So I need 200 hours. I have spare capacity of 150 hours. So I will only have to bother about 50 hours. Okay. So what rate do I use the 50 hours at? So do I have any options? No, they are only talking about overtime. So if they gave me a hiring of labor option for 50 hours, then I will compare the overtime rates with the hiring cost and pick the lower out of the two. So the OT rate is 16. They say time and a half 24. 24 into 50 is 1200. Right. There is no spare capacity for semi-skilled workers. They are currently paid 12 per hour or time and a half for overtime. Local agency can provide semi-skilled laborers for 14. So this is what I was telling you. So I have the overtime option. I have the higher option. So the higher option says you can hire for 14. The overtime option says semi-skilled labor. You can go for 12 into 1.5, which is 18. Lower of the two, 14. So we are talking about 300 hours into 14, 4,200. The $3 absorption rate is HL company's standard factory overhead absorption rate of 1.5 per labor hour. Per hour, and reflects the cost of the factory supervisor's salary. And the other 1.5 reflects general factory costs. So ideally, if it's a general factory cost, that's not relevant. Supervisor's salary, if it's like a monthly salary, that's not relevant. Let's see. The supervisor is paid an annual salary, so which means it's not relevant. And also paid 15 per hour for any overtime he works. So if he's working on overtime specifically for this, then it sort of becomes relevant. He will need to work 20 hours of overtime if this is to be accepted. Yes, I must take that 20 hours of overtime, and the overtime rate was given as 15. So that's a 300. Note number 6 says the admin overhead is an apportionment. So don't take that into account because you're not specifically incurring an admin cost. So if they ask for the relevant cost, 9,619, that's your answer. The things that I verbally mentioned, you need to explain a bit. So if you like, you can take a screenshot or probably take down. Okay. This is the F5 class, Aisha. Repeat note to explanation and the wood calculation. Why didn't we take 300 of fabric in inventory? Because why didn't we take 300? Because we need only 200. So that's your answer. So repeat note to calculation and wood. So there are two individuals referring to the same thing. So what they're saying is I need 50 meters of wood, guys. Listen carefully. Okay. So I have 500. From the 500, I need a 480. So I can't take that. So I can take this 20. Ideally, I can't take the 20 because the 20 also is going to be needed in 4 weeks. But I can use that and place an order for that 20 right now, which will come in 3 weeks' time at a rate of 820. So that is this piece. Okay. And then we have to get another 30 to fulfill the 50. No? So why can't I get 30 also at 820? Simple. That's going to take 3 weeks to come. And my order needs to be done in 2 weeks. So therefore, I will have to place an immediate order where the supplier will deliver immediately, but at 8.5. So 13 to 8.5. That's your answer there. What else do we have? What's the requirement? I can't see. 300 at 17. Why not? Because they want only 200. And we have to take the replacement cost. That's why not. So someone wants to see the requirement. There you are, but I have to moving it a bit. Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Dustin. But 10-15 seconds. You're welcome, Imran. In about 10 seconds, I'll wipe this off. So if you like, you can take a screenshot. 5, 4, 3, 2, no question. Is relevant costing all? No. Like what I said, I just looked at it. Probably I'm not too sure if you just joined in, Tasnim. Relevant costing is applied to one-off contracts, make or buy decisions, shutdown decisions, and it's on relevant costing principles. But when it comes to further processing decisions, we have a separate methodology which we follow, but it is on relevant costing principles. Why 50 hours has to be multiplied by the OT rate? Because the normal hours are fully utilized. Okay, the okay, they have 150 spare hours which we use for this particular purpose, but then again they are on fixed term contracts. I don't have to pay anything extra for that. So since if we take the 150 hours, their normal working hours are fully utilized. So therefore, we will have to get them to work after normal working hours, which goes at overtime rate. So then we always ignore non-cash in relevant costing. Yes. Okay. (6:15). Is it possible to start section at 6:15? I think the time is now 6:20. Okay. Anyway, today is the last day. Okay. Sorry, guys. So anyway, let me remove this and move on. Erase. Yeah. So let's go to the PowerPoint. 46. So the last topic, risk and uncertainty. Risk is the variability in future returns. Investors can be risk averse, risk takers, or risk neutral. There's upside risk versus downside risk. You buy something for 100, it goes up to 120. That's a risk, but that's an upside risk. So then how do you look at risk in terms of a calculation? The probability into the impact. Research techniques, desk research, as the term says, you're sitting in front of a desk and doing your research. Company records, economic intelligence, market data. So this is all available stuff, secondary stuff. Okay. Field research, you have to get into the field and get the data that you're looking for. So we have motivational research, measurement research, and you get it done through questionnaires, experiments and observations, group interviews, triad testing, and focus groups. What's a focus group? Basically, a group of people put together. Probably they'll be given a prototype of a product, go through it, tell us what you think about it, etc. Scenario planning. Okay, so this is one second. Yeah. So scenario planning is basically the advanced version of sensitivity analysis. So what is sensitivity analysis? That's the impact which gets created, or the impact on, let's say, something like profitability most of the time due to a change in one particular variable. Okay. Scenario planning says in the real world, practically so many things can change at the same time. For example, your material price can go up and your selling price also can go up at the same time because of that. So according to sensitivity analysis, I can't use sensitivity analysis. It's not that you can't, but then again, you don't call it sensitivity if two variables change. A mechanism that we can use in a situation like that is scenario planning. It's a highly complicating method in terms of a calculation. So for exam purposes, we only need to know what it is. So how do we do this? You don't have to know how to do it, but then again, calculation wise, you need to know what this means. That's all. Okay. Identify high impact, high uncertainty factors. Identify different possible futures. Identify consistent future scenarios. Write the scenario. For each scenario, identify and assess possible courses of action. Monitor reality. Sorry about that. Revise scenarios and strategic options. So how do you do this scenario planning? Through a technique called simulation. Okay, you might have heard of Monte Carlo simulation. Apply probabilities to key factors in scenario analysis. Use random numbers to select a particular scenario and calculate the outcome. Repeat until build up a picture of possible outcomes and make the decision based on the risk aversion. Expected values, the outcome into the probability. Make your decision based on the best expected value. Value of perfect information. Sometimes there'll be a situation where you have the option of doing a research to get a better idea of what will actually happen. But the research will come at a cost. So are you willing to spend that money? So depends on the cost of the research. At the same time, depends on the increase in the expected value based on the information which comes through the research. So therefore, we have to compute what we call a value of perfect information to make the decision. Should I actually spend money on research? Yes or no? Okay. So research gives me perfect information. Is it worthwhile to pay and get it? That's what it means. Expected values, it has pluses, recognizes that there are several possible outcomes, enables the probability of different outcomes to be taken into account, leads directly to a simple optimizing decision rule. So multiply the x with the probability total up. Based on that, you decide whether you are going ahead, yes or no. Calculations are simple. Negatives are there as well. Probabilities used are subjective. The expected value is the average payoff, not useful for one-off decisions. Okay. So if you're trying to do something, for example, should I organize a, I don't know, a Lady Gaga concert? Yes or no? Okay. uh, you're not gonna do a Lady Gaga concert every day. So it's just a one-off incident. Okay. So expected value cannot be used for a situation like that, because sometimes you'll get calculations which says, okay, fine, the success of the concert is this probability, and so we will get so much. Okay. But still you can do a EV, but what I'm saying is it's not practical to make a decision on an average figure. Okay. For a one-off decision, gives no indication of the risk and ignores the investor's attitude to risk. So ideally, EV is the suggested approach for a risk neutral decision maker. Sensitivity analysis, like what I said before, the lower version of scenario planning, identify key variables by calculating how much an estimate can change before the decision reverses, can only vary one estimate at a time. Then we have payoff tables. Prepare a table of profits based on different decisions, choices, and different scenarios. So we have four types. Expected value, I just told you. We have maximin, max, and mini max regret. Right. So I think we have four questions to finish the topic. MCQ time from December 2014. Can someone get this answer for me while I respond to some of your queries? Scenario planning is a technique that we use to analyze situations where the future is uncertain, where several variables change at the same time. So basically, it's calculations done where you say, okay, what if material goes up by 10% and labor goes up by 3%? What if material goes up by 10, labor goes up by 3, and selling price comes down by 2%? What if material goes up by 10, labor goes up by 3, selling price goes down by 5%? So you can have like a million scenarios there. Okay. Right. So based on that, okay, if you're trying to get the technique that you adopt is what we call scenario planning. Okay. For situations like that. You're welcome, Afri. Uh, please concentrate on risk and uncertainty. I have a gut feeling that they are going to ask it this time. Okay, it'll definitely be asked, but we are not too sure if it's a big question. And even if it's a big question, we are not too sure if you're going to get it. Okay, so but yes, as you correctly said, okay, let's go with your gut feeling and let's prepare ourselves. There's nothing wrong in it. Okay, right. So on that note, okay. Uh, So we have a suggestion. Is it answer A? Aisha says it's answer A. Three companies considering employing a sales manager. Market research has shown that a good sales manager can increase profits by 30%, an average by 20%, and a poor one by 10%. Experience has shown that the company has attracted a good sales manager, 35%, average 45, a poor 20. Company's normal profit is 180 and the manager is paid a salary of 40. Based on the expected value criteria, which of the following represents the correct advice which tree company should be given? Right. So 100, and we have three managers now: the good fellow, the average guy, the poor guy. So the good fellow will increase profits by 30%. The average guy will increase profits by 20%. Poor guy will increase profits by 10%. 54,000, 36,000, 18,000. That's X, PX, XPX. So probability of you getting a good sales manager, 35%. Average one is 45%, 20%. 3, 6 there. 18,900 there. 16,200 there. 18,900 plus 38,700. So to get this increase, I have to hire a guy and pay the fellow 40. So by doing so, we lose 1,300. A for apple. The given answer was absolutely right. Just give a minute for you to take down. Okay, let me clear the screen. If you want, take a screenshot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next question. MCQ time again from the specimen paper this time around. Question number 7. So yesterday a question was asked and I said, okay, we're going to look at a decision tree. Okay. They can't ask you to draw one. Aisha wants to distinguish between simulation and stimulation. I think stimulation, it's best if you look at the dictionary there. Simulation is what I mentioned. The stimulation, there's nothing called stimulation, anything connected to our syllabus. Okay. By the way, I must wish all of you guys a very happy Valentine's Day today. So, a leisure company owns a number of large health and fitness resorts, but one is suffering from declining sales and is predicted to make a loss in the next year. As a result, management have identified a number of possible actions: shut down the resort and sell off the assets, undertake a major upgrade to facilities costing 4.5, a minor upgrade costing 2. The upgrades are predicted to have variable results, and the probability of good results after a major upgrade is 0.8, whereas the probability of good results after a minor upgrade is 0.7. The company is risk neutral and has prepared the following decision tree. So they give you the details over there. Which decision should you take? Okay, right. So one thing is, if I shut down, it's 5.75. That's what I get. Okay. So if I go for a major upgrade, XPX, XPX, I'll get 11 or 7.5. And what's the probability of 11? They said it's 0.8. Good results, major upgrade. So if that's zero point 0.8, that's definitely going to be a 0.2. So that's a 1.5 there, and that's a 8.8 there, giving me a 10.3. But to get the 10.3, I need to spend a 4.5. So which gives me 5.8. So then we can take a minor upgrade. XPX, XPX, 9 and 6, 0.7, 0.3, 1.8 there, 6.3 there. Add it up, 8.1, and spent 2, 6.1. So I have three answers: 6.1, 5.8, 5.75. That's the highest. I'll go for a minor upgrade, answer C. So I see some replies. Yeah, C is correct. So I'll clear this in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I move on. I'm skipping a slide and moving on to the last one. From June 2015, question number 4. The mobile sandwich company prepares sandwiches and sells to employees at local businesses each day. Demand varies between 325 and 400 sandwiches each day. As the day progresses, the price of the sandwich is reduced, and at the end of the day, any sandwiches not sold are thrown away. The company has prepared a regret table. So they have made the regret table for me. I don't have to go through that torture of making that regret table. Okay. Which would be foregone, sorry, to a table to show the amount of profit foregone each day at each supply level, given the varying daily levels of demand. So they're giving you supply horizontally, demand vertically. Applying the decision criteria of minimax regret. Okay, so I always tell my guys, okay, to look at the backside first in terms of these research techniques. Maximum regret. So under each of the options, pick the maximum regret. And under each of the options where I have control, not based on demand, but based on supply. So on 325, what's the maximum regret? On 350, on 375, and on 400. So then look at the minimum from the four figures underlined. Don't look at anything else now. This is useless. This is useless. These three are useless. These three are useless. From the underlined figures, what is the minimum? Answer 375. C for cat. Seems to be a question. Yeah, from the minimum regrets, sorry, from the maximum regrets, I take the minimum one. No, no. You said minimum contribution, we take the maximum one. No. From the maximum regrets, we take the minimum one. uh, Easy way to identify what the outcome is. Yes, basically I think the question is, okay, uh, should you take the highest this way, or ideally vertically or horizontally? That depends on, you can't say, that depends on how the question structured. So ideally, if I take supply, that's my controllable factor. No, I can't control demand. So your decision or your selection has to be based on the controllable factor. So out of 3 to 5, what's the maximum regret? Okay. Not out of a demand of 3 to 5, out of a supply of 3 to 5, because supply is my controllable factor. Right. So I hope you got that. I'm going to clear this. 3, 2, 1. And last slide in the handout, in the presentation, sorry, which says go to page 8, cement company, from specimen 2014. So I'll close that off, okay, unless you have any questions before we go to section A. Right, cement company. That's your question from September 2014. Oh, sorry, from the specimen paper way back 2014. Right. So before I go there, let me take a question. You will come up, right? That's not a question. Right. So let's move on to this. So it says something like this: cement company is specializing in the manufacture of cement and a product used in the building industry. Yeah, we know that. The company has found that when weather conditions are good, the demand for the cement increases since more building work is able to take place. Correct? No? Okay, that's common sense. Cement company is now trying to work out the level of cement production for the coming year in order to maximize profits. The company has received the following estimates about probable weather conditions and corresponding demand levels for the current year, coming year. So weather condition, good, average, poor. So depending on the weather condition, what's your demand? Each bag of cement sells for 9 and costs 4 to make. If cement is unsold at the end of the year, it has to be disposed at a cost of 50 cents per bag. So this was probably not a regular question. So the 9 and the 4, the selling price and the cost and all those things we know, okay? But ideally, a disposal cost, it's not a big deal, but then again, not a regular question. Cement company has decided to produce at one of 3 levels of production to match the forecast demand. It now has to decide which level of cement production to select. Construct a payoff table to show all the possible profit outcomes. And then the part B says determine the level of cement production the company should choose based on the decision rule maximin. Okay. So first of all, to get the maximin answer also, I need to end up doing my payoff table, which is the answer to part A of the question. Okay. Right. Let me get this done through our platform itself. So let me say ACCA constructed response workspace. First search result, access constructed response workspace. Right. So ready to get going with this. So we have 350,000 bags, 280,000 bags, and 200,000 bags. So 350. I'll make it a little bigger. That's okay. 350, 280, and then 200. 350, 280, 200. So there's supply, there's demand. Right. So if supply is 350,000, according to the question, I am selling for 9, I'm producing for 4, disposal cost is 50 cents. Okay. So 350,000 into 9 minus 350,000 into 4. That's your answer. If supply is 350,000 but demand is 280, so it's only 280 into 9 minus 350 into 4. You can refer the cells. Remember, it's not functioning properly. That's why I'm typing the values. If not, you can refer to the cells. And the other thing is 350 minus 280. That's unsold. Now that gets disposed at a 50-cent cost. That's that answer. So just in case you want to see that again, this is what I sell based on demand. This is what I produce based on supply. This is what I was unable to sell, the difference between the two, into 0.5. So copy that and paste it. And now make this 200 and make this also 200. Now careful with this, although demand is 350, if I'm selling 280 or producing only 280, supplying only 280, I can't sell 350. So it's 280 into 9 minus 280 into 4. Copy and paste. And then demand 200 into 9 minus 280 into 4, again minus the difference between the two, that is 280 minus 200 into 0.5. So if you are selling or supplying only 200,000, then these two are immaterial. So it's going to be 200,000 into 9 minus 200,000 into 4. One may ask, so what about 200,000 into 9 minus 4? Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So for doing this, just like this, one might say, you can't see the calculations. It's not that you can't see. If you double click it, you can see. Okay. And the examiner or the person or your marker will have access to it. Okay. So for doing this, you get 8 marks. And then they ask you, what if I go with maximin? So like what I said just now, based on Afri's question, so maximin, okay, pick the lowest based on my controllable factor, which is supply. Okay, so the lowest is 325, or I think it's better if I do this. Pick the lowest 325, pick the lowest 640, and pick the lowest. Anything's fine, same thing. So maybe let's say we'll pick all. Okay, maximin. So out of the figures that you have highlighted, what is the maximum? 100,000. So which means your answer is you must supply 200,000 cement bags. That's your answer. Yes, Usman wants day 1 and day 2 notes. Yes, I can send it to you. I'll share my email today again, and anyone wants notes, I'll send it across. Why are we multiplying it by 4? Because the cost is 4. Okay. How the payoff amounting 108,500 has been extracted. I'll come to that. I'll show you. And then when making decisions based on supply quantity, uh, yeah, so basically maximin, maximax, and minimax regret your final decision. When you're selecting figures, you have to select it based on the controllable variable. So don't misunderstand. Don't think it will always be a demand supply question also. Okay, right. So I think Abdullah has just joined in. What did I do last? We concluded relevant costing and risk and uncertainty. Why you deduct the disposal? Because that's a cost involved and I have to deduct it. Okay, right. So 1085, there was a request for the formula. There you go. So Aisha wanted explanation on stress testing. Okay, so stress testing is a situation where I too believe, she says that it was seen in some of the MCQs. I too believe this is not specifically there in the syllabus, but I'm answering the question since you've asked it. Okay, it can be done through software and all. So basically, it can indirectly get connected to simulation. Okay, so we are talking about testing beyond the normal operational capacity. So basically looking at that extreme point or the breaking point. Okay. So ideally with simulation, okay, I think this is where it's coming from. Okay. Uh, Especially the banks and all compute something called value at risk. Okay. So this value at risk is a situation where they think, okay, if the worst out of the worst happens, okay, how much will we lose? That's what we call the value at risk. So this value at risk computations and all come through this aspect called stress testing as well. Okay, which is a bit of an extreme end of simulation, I can say, or scenario planning. Okay, so probably you got the answer. Okay, right. I can't find the day four's notes. It's on the right side. There's something called on your software, something called handouts. There should be 3 handouts. Okay. What do I recommend for MCQ practice? Basically, uh, there's quite a few past papers with MCQs. I will recommend you to do that. Okay. And in addition to that, I will probably ask you to go through MCQs published in an exam kit of a approved publisher. Okay. Aisha wants to know, why do we deduct 350,000 variable cost? Simple, Aisha, because I am producing 350,000. So I'm incurring a variable cost for 350,000 units. That's why I deduct the variable cost of 350, although I am selling only 280. Okay. Do as many MCQs as you possibly can. Right. So I'm going to clear this off and I'm going to move on to today's session, ideally, what we were supposed to do. So welcome to day 4, ideally, although we've already started it, okay, with me, Shehan, again, okay. So today, if we go on to the area that we're trying to look at over here, is today we're going to look at two things: a syllabus area and ending tips, cost accounting techniques, ending tips and questions. That's what we're trying to see. Okay, right. uh, I don't have a study group as such, but then again, like what I said, I will and always share my email address, okay, again today, so that you can contact me for any queries. Right. So traditional and advanced costing methods is what we're trying to see over here. Okay. ABC, target costing, life cycle costing, throughput accounting, environmental accounting. Okay. Right. So I'm gonna ask a question, quickly answer me. I think I have told you this as well. Okay. This section of your syllabus, can it get tested in all 3 areas of your exam? That is, can it come as a section A question, section B question, section C question? Yes or no? Quickly type in your answer. So I have mixed answers. Okay, correct ones, wrong ones. Yes, thank you everyone. Only A and B. Yes, that's the majority answer and that's the correct answer. Okay. One person says only in A. No, it can come in section B also. One person says it can come in all 3. No, it can't come as a big question. Okay, right. So just thought of asking you guys. Okay, so in which case, okay, personally I would say yes, if you have time, that's okay. But if you're trying to practice a very big question on activity based costing, which requires so many computations, I'm saying you're wasting a little time there. Okay, unless you've covered every possible thing and for knowledge purposes you're trying to do something like that, then that's okay. But I would focus more on MCQ fill in the blank type of questions connected to ABC rather than a big one. Why? Because simple, that's what's going to come for your exam. Okay, right. uh, no, ABC cannot come in section C, Adele. Okay. Maybe you may have got this doubt through there's a there's the specimen paper, or probably some of the extra CR questions. Okay, there's a ABC question in your PM uh, area. Okay, in this, either in the specimen paper or the extra CR questions on ABC. But I'm sorry, I'm not saying this, but then again, the examiner saying this on the syllabus outline document, so it cannot come for section C. Okay, In the past, it has come as big questions, not anymore. Right. The steps: identify the activities, identify the cost pool, identify the cost driver, compute the OAR per driver, and compute the OAR per product. OAR, I believe you are aware, overhead absorption rate, and charge cost to units of production based on the cost driver volume. Okay. So the cost driver rate is the total driver pool cost or the total cost, and that divided by the cost driver volume. Okay. Right. So then we have advantages, okay, of ABC. The costing is more realistic. We get a better insight into cost drivers, resulting in better cost control because it tells you what is causing the cost and so on. Particularly useful where overhead costs are a significant proportion of total cost. Recognizes that overhead costs are not all related to production and sales volumes, can be applied to all overhead costs, not just production overheads, and can be used just as easily in service costing as well. So these are the pluses. There are some negatives as well. It is impossible to allocate all overhead costs to specific activities. The choice of both activities and cost drivers might be inappropriate. ABC can be more complex to explain to the stakeholders of the costing exercise. The benefits obtained from ABC might not justify the cost. Okay. Right. So there will still be certain costs where you cannot specifically find the cost driver. That's the first thing. Okay. Right. So sometimes it's very difficult to match an activity with a cost driver. Okay. And finally, okay, this can be very expensive implementing it, finding people who know how to properly introduce ABC into my company. Implications of ABC, where can I use it? For pricing purposes, where the cost becomes more realistic. So then there's the sales strategy. More realistic margins can help focus sales strategy and decision making. For example, research and development can be directed at products with better margins. Okay, fine. So move on. Like what I said, MCQ time. No point focusing on big questions. So can we get an answer to this, please? The only problem with this ABC questions are it takes generally a hell of a lot of time for you to do. Okay. But at the same time, you must understand something like an environmental costing question, which we will touch on with a few MCQs. That's going to take, not going to take too much of time. So identify the activity, then there's the cost pool, then there's the cost driver, OAR per driver, then OAR per product. So the activities are setup cost, then there's inspection cost, then there's other cost, 140,000, 80,000, 96,000. Cost driver is production runs 28 given in the question, inspections, number of inspections 8 given in the question. Other costs are based on labor hours, 48,000 given in the question. So 140,000 divided by 28 is 5,000. 80,000 divided by 8 is 10,000. 96,000 divided by 48 is 2. So they want me to do this for product D. Product D is 10 labor hours per unit, so I can say 2 into 10 is 20. So then 3 inspections. So 10,000 into 3 inspections. That gets divided by 4,000 units that you're producing. So that's a 7.5 over there. And 5,000 per production run. 15 production runs there to make 4,000. So that gives me 18.75. Giving me an answer of 46.25. B for boy. So that's how you do ABC if I'm to show you as a practice question. So I've got answer B from a few. Yes, your answer is perfectly correct. So this can't be very, very complicating if you know the methodology. That's basically the steps. The only way they can complicate something like this is where data is not clearly given to you, it's hidden, and where you may have to sometimes do certain calculations to find the data. So that's the complication, if at all. But other than that, it's a time consuming question, but it's not a very difficult area, I must say. So I'm going to clear this. If you like, you can take a screenshot. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, clear. So then we move on to another question on activity-based costing. Okay. A company from September 2016. A company makes 2 products, it says. Using the same type of materials, skilled labor, and material. The following information is available: budgeted volume, material per unit, labor. Fixed cost relating to material handling amounts to 100,000. The cost driver for these costs is the volume of material purchased. General fixed cost is 180,000. And what are they asking me? They are asking me to use ABC. What is the total fixed overhead amount to be absorbed for each unit of product B? Okay. Fixed cost 100,000. The volume of material purchased. So the volume of material will vary based on the same aspect of cost of material. So therefore, if I'm to do a calculation, my cost pool is so much. My cost driver will be 1000 into 10 plus 2000 into 20. So when I do this 100,000 and I get a $2 there. So this is OAR per driver. So OAR per product. So that is going to be, this is per dollar, no? Okay. So if I'm looking at product B, So that's 2 into 20. OAR per product is 40 then. So again, general fixed costs are based on labor hours. I don't have labor hours, but then again, just like what I said for material, the labor cost will vary directly proportionate to the labor hours. So I will have to go with cost where I say 1000 into 5 plus 2000 into 20. That gives me a 4. So now we have a 4 into 20, which is a 80, giving me 120. Answer B. So people are getting this right, I think. Let me clear it in 5, 4, if you like a screenshot, 3, 2, 1. And then I go back to the next slide, which is probably the second topic, target costing. Estimate a market-driven selling price for a new product. Example, to capture a required market share. Reduce this figure by the firm's required level of profit based on the target ROI. Produce the target cost. So decide on the selling price minus the profit, get the target cost. Compare with the estimated cost to find the cost gap and take necessary steps to reduce the cost gap to 0. How do you do that? Value analysis basically identify where it creates value through this product. If it's not creating value, remove it and save that cost. If it creates value, see if it's the best way to do it, or can I do some form of adjustment and reduce the cost through another mechanism. Focus is on reducing cost without compromising the perceived value. Can labor savings be made? Can productivity be improved? So this is all mechanisms to reduce the cost gap. And what production volume is needed to achieve economies of scale. So there are other things that can be done as well. Could cost savings be made by reviewing the supply chain? Can any materials be eliminated? Can cheaper materials be substituted? Can I get part-time employees? Can the incidence of cost drivers be reduced? So ideally, in simple words, what can I do to cut down my cost is what we're trying to see. Implications of target costing. So basically for pricing purposes, might identify the sufficient cost savings to reduce the target price, and cost control, that is target cost motivates managers to find new ways of saving cost because you have to stick to that target cost. Okay, right. A very simple MCQ. Okay, selling price of a product is set at 550, so that's your target selling price. They're asking the target cost now. So target cost is target selling price minus target profit, 550 minus, they are saying we are investing 500,000 and we are expecting a return of 30%. So that's the target profit, but that's the target profit for all the products. I'm going to make 800 units. So that's the target profit per product. Giving me 362.5, answer D. So there's a question on what about target costing in service industries. You know, service industries, you can use target costing, but then again, it's not very straightforward. So basically, just know the issues that we will face when using target costing in service industries. Because you know, a service is not homogeneous. Okay, even the same person, okay, you would have gone into classes of the same tutor. Some are good, some are sometimes not too great. Okay, maybe the same subject matter, when the tutor does it the next time around, it's better. Because again, at the end of the day, as a tutor, I must say, we are also human. Okay, so there's a possibility that sometimes you're having a bad day. Okay, so yeah, if you're compromising on the quality of the lecture, I'm not saying that's correct, that's definitely wrong. But then again, maybe there's probably someone at the home front who's not too well. Okay, so coming back to what I'm trying to say, okay, yes, so those aspects of those qualities of the service, okay, simultaneous production and consumption, okay, so those can affect certain aspects connected to this. So I'm going to erase this and I'm going to move on to life cycle costing. Okay, right. So I think I sort of mentioned, okay, implications on service industries. Okay, yeah, it's difficult, but it's not impossible. Yes, correct. Life cycle costing is the profiling of cost over product's life, including pre-production stage. Tracks and accumulates the actual costs and revenues attributable to each product from inception to abandonment. So ideally from pre-production to even after sales, enables products true profitability to be determined at the end of the economic life. So the summary is, most of us are used to preparing accounts for a year, but you and I know that generally, especially when businesses start, might not be very profitable. So what this tries to say is, don't take a hasty decision. Okay, see if you can make money in the long run. Okay, so not a year. So if you can cover up your costs over time, maybe after 3, 4, 5 years, still it's worth a shot according to life cycle costing principles. Right. So we use this in pricing decisions. So can be based on total life cycle cost rather than the cost for a period. Decision making, a timetable of life cycle cost helps to show what cost needs to be recovered, and control, okay, reinforces the importance of tight control over locked in costs such as R&D. Performance reporting, life cycle costing costs the products over their entire life cycles to aid comparison with product revenues generated in later periods. Right, so can we get an answer to this from our specimen paper? Question number 12, it's MCQ time. Which of the following statements regarding life cycle costing is correct? It can be applied not only to products, but also to organizations, customers. Yes, there's something called customer life cycle costing. That's correct. It includes any opportunity costs. No. One thing which I didn't mention, sorry about that. Life cycle costing is always based on accounting principles or financial accounting principles. So things like opportunity cost, you don't take it into account. Okay. So don't mix up relevant costing principles with life cycle costing. The maturity phase is characterized by a rapid build up in demand. Wrong. That is the growth phase. Often 70 to 90% of the costs are determined early in the life cycle. That's right. So we're talking about answer C. Okay. I believe that's what you would have entered. Okay. Right. Uh, Huzaifa wants a review on relevant costing. I'm not too sure if you joined in late. We concluded relevant costing at the start of the session. Okay. So we compare entire life cycle cost with entire life cycle revenue to check profitability of a product. Yes, of course. That's perfectly right. Okay. Right. So on that note, answer C. And how about another one? The following costs arise in relation to production of a new product: research and development, design cost, testing, advertising, production. If you're doing life cycle costing, which do you exclude? Answer, I'm not going to waste time. Nothing. You take everything into account in terms of the cost that you incur, like what I said, except for aspects like opportunity cost. Okay, right. So can you jump to environmental accounting? We'll close it off with throughput accounting. Cost classifications, there are several types of classifications of cost and environmental accounting. Just go through them. Ways used to account for it. This is the more common or mostly asked or touched on area connected to environmental costing or accounting. So there are four types: environmental activity based costing, life cycle costing, flow cost accounting, and input output analysis. Okay, right. So you have to have a brief idea on it. It's MCQ time, and they are asking you which is true, which is false from the specimen paper, question number 4. The majority of environmental costs are already captured within a typical organization's accounting system. The difficulty lies in identifying them. That answer is perfectly right. So we know we are spending money sometimes indirectly to save the environment, but then again, we don't know how much sometimes. Input-output analysis divides material flows within an organization into 3 categories: material flows, system flows, and delivery and disposal flows. That sounds very, very correct, but it's wrong, because that's not input-output analysis. The definition's right, but it talks about flow cost accounting. But it sounds very correct, but it's wrong. One of the cost categories used in environmental activity based costing is environment driven cost, which is used for cost which can be directly traced to a cost center. Okay. What is your thought on that? That answer is wrong. Okay. uh, Again, the statement's right, but it's not an environment driven cost, it's an environment related cost what they're talking about. Okay. Environmental life cycle costing enables environmental cost from the design stage of the product right through to decommissioning at the end of its life to be considered. Yes, absolutely right. 1 and 4, answer B for boy. Okay. From June 2015. Question number 17. When activity-based costing is used for environmental accounting, which statement is correct for environment-related cost and driven cost? Environmental-related cost can be attributed to joint cost centers. Environmental-driven cost cannot be. That answers right. That comes from the theoretical aspects in terms of activity-based costing and under the activity-based costing under environmental accounting, right? So that concludes that as well. So I move on to throughput accounting. Okay, right. So what's the background? Application of key factor analysis to production bottleneck. So it's actually again limiting factor analysis here, but then again with a little adjustment or difference. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, so difference between environmental related cost and driven cost. Actually, we don't have to go into a big deal of depth there, Afri. So even the article which focuses on environmental management accounting just gives you something similar to what was just discussed through those questions in terms of driven cost and related cost. So I don't think we are needed to know uh, anything beyond that. Okay. So Imran wants some notes on environmental accounting. I can share mine, but mine is also mainly based on the examiner's article. So let me show you that today before the end of the day. Okay, but if you really want me to send mine, I can do that. So I'll share my email address with you. Right. So the only total variable cost are the purchases of raw material slash components. So here, when you say throughput contribution is selling price minus direct material cost, I believe you know that. Direct labor costs are not wholly variable. Okay. So therefore, direct labor costs are not taken into account when doing the calculation. So if it's multi-product decisions, just like contribution per limiting factor, here too I rank the products by throughput contribution per hour of bottleneck resource time. So in other words, it's something like the contribution per limiting factor, but it's throughput contribution. So how do you get throughput contribution? Revenue minus raw material cost. So then another famous formula that we use here is the throughput accounting ratio, that is throughput per hour of bottleneck resource, operating cost, expenses per hour of bottleneck resource. I'll add in another formula. I will say, let's cut the per hour part. So sometimes if the data gives you the details, I can simply say throughput contribution, which is selling price minus direct material cost, operating expenses, direct labor plus overheads. So these two can give me the same answer there. Okay. And much faster, but assuming the data is given to me in terms of per unit values and these items probably. Okay. So let me clear that and let me move on. There's a question. Salman wants to know wholly variable. Wholly variable. I think he's referring to direct labor costs are not wholly variable. So that's what I mean is, so that's direct labor cost. See, practically, you hardly can find a fellow in the real world who's working on a piece rate. So in that sense, your labor cost is actually not variable if you really think about it. So right throughout our syllabus, when it comes to most topics, okay, we assume direct labor to be variable, but no one's working on piece rates. Okay. So the introducers or those who found this concept of throughput accounting says, do not take direct labor cost as a variable cost. The only purely variable cost is material. So let's go through with it. So how to improve TPAR? So mathematically, you can reduce the denominator or increase the numerator. Increase the selling price, reduce the operating cost, or improve productivity. Right. So question, a company manufactures a product which requires 4 hours per unit of machine time. Look at this question. So this is what I was trying to tell you about in terms of the formula which I said. So TPAR is equal to selling price minus direct material and then divided by direct labor plus overheads. Okay. So company manufactures products which requires 4 hours per unit of machine time. Machine time is a bottleneck resource and there are only 10 machines available, 12 hours per day for 5 days per week. Okay, so let me just do that. I'll tell you why. The product has a selling price of 130 and a direct material cost of 50. The labor cost is 40 and the factory overhead is 20. Okay. Answer is A. These costs are based on weekly production and sales of 150. So what I'm trying to tell you is that's completely not needed for me to make my decision. Okay. If I go with this formula, you can always take those things, no problem. If you're going with that other formula, but you're going to waste a hell of a lot of time to get the answer 1.33. Okay. Right. So there seems to be a question. What does broadly throughput mean? They have used a word somewhere. Let me clear this. I don't know, I'm not clear on the question. Cyrus, I'm not clear on your question, sorry. Repeat the formula. Yeah, I can put down the formula. This was the question. So the formula was throughput accounting ratio, TPAR, equals selling price minus direct material, direct labor plus overheads. All of this will be given on a per unit basis. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a very short break. Okay. And we're going to come back and look at, basically we're done, just one question, and we close off with some exam tips to finish it off. Okay. So the question that we're supposed to do is from our specimen paper, Glam Company. Okay. So we'll take a break and come back. What is the meaning of throughput accounting? Okay. So that was the question. Okay. So throughput accounting is basically another mechanism which they have introduced, okay, to identify bottlenecks and come up with a mechanism to how we can proceed in a situation of a bottleneck where we in the long term or basically sometimes in the short run also try to find ways to remove these bottlenecks and increase the throughput or the number of units produced. So it's a technique that focuses on those aspects. I hope you got the answer, Alvin. It's same as other formula where we use bottleneck hours and everything is too long. Your formula works on every question. It doesn't work on every question. It can work on every question, Aisha, but the thing is, it depends on the data provided in the question. So sometimes they'll give you throughput contribution per hour. So if they give you the throughput contribution per hour, I guess it's best to go with the other formula. Okay. So now my suggestion is if data is provided for you to go ahead with per unit and per hour, go with per unit, you can get the answer quickly. Right. So let me clear this. Break. Back in 5 minutes. Or shall we say about 8 minutes? Yeah, can we get the recordings? Yes. Vimeo.com/ACCA Pakistan. My email address, who loves Tweety at gmail.com. I'll see you in about 8 minutes. Hi guys, I'm back for the second session on our last day. Right. Questions, the costing section will only be tested to the extent of these practice questions we attempted. Uh, yeah, I guess, no, not I guess, yes. So I'm not too sure if it's the level of difficulty that you're referring to, or probably can be easy or difficult in that sense. But then again, yeah, it can be fill in the blanks. It can be true, false questions or multiple answers, but not section C questions. Okay, right. Uh, will we practice some section B type questions too in today's session? That's the next one. Yes. While practicing question of throughput, there I had a requirement of calculate the throughput accounting ratio, the profit maximizing output. So what does that mean? So basically, there'll be a particular profit maximizing solution. So for that solution, what's the contribution that you get, and what's the operating cost that you incur? So that contribution over the operating cost will be the throughput accounting ratio at the profit maximizing solution. Okay. So probably that's what they're referring to, Alvin. Okay. Right, so I'll move on. Let me clear all of this. Specimen from Glam Company. Okay, there you are. So that's today's last question, by the way. So a section B question also. Let's start. Glam Company is a hairdressing salon which provides both cuts and treatments to clients. All cuts and treatments at the salon are carried out by one of the salon's three senior stylists. Salon also has two salon assistants and two junior stylists. Every customer attending the salon is first seen by a salon assistant who washes the hair, next by a senior stylist who cuts and treats the hair, and then depending on the services the customer wants, then finally a junior stylist who dries the hair. The average length of time spent by each member of the staff is as follows. Assistant, senior stylist, junior stylist, they're giving you the time taken for a cut and a treatment. So then the salon is open for 8 hours a day and 6 days per week. It is only closed for 2 weeks each year. Staff salaries are 40,000 each year for each senior stylist, 28,000 each year for each junior stylist, and 12,000 each year for each of the assistants. The cost of cleaning products applied when washing the hair is 1.5 per client. The cost of all additional products applied during the treatment is 7.4 per client. Other salon costs amount to 106,400 each year. Glam Company charges 60 for a haircut and 110 for each treatment. The senior stylist time is identified as the bottleneck activity. What is the annual capacity of the bottleneck activity is what they are asking. Okay, so senior stylist time, okay, they say is the bottleneck activity. So the good thing is the bottleneck is mentioned. Okay, so how many senior stylists do we have? If I can remember, there was three, right? Three senior stylists, there you are. So how much of time do we have? There are three people. Okay, each person works for 8 hours per day, 6 days per week. So if the salon is closed for 2 weeks, we're talking about 50 weeks. So this multiplication gives me an answer of 7,200. So we have 7,200 hours of senior stylist time. Okay. So what is the bottleneck activity? If I take a haircut takes 1 hour. So I can do 7,200 haircuts. If I take the treatment, I will take 1.5 hours, which means I can do a 4,800. Answer C. When I move, the alignment gets messed up. So those who want to take down quickly. I'm going to clear it. Screenshot even is fine. In 3, 2, 1, clear. Right. So then if I am to move down, the next one too is not too difficult. The salon has calculated the cost per hour. Okay. What is the throughput accounting ratio for both services? So this was what I was telling you. Since they have given per hour, then don't go with the shortcut formula, because in that long formula, the part of it is given, so you don't have to adjust it. So TPAR is throughput contribution per hour divided by conversion cost per hour. So we are talking about the haircut and the treatment. So throughput contribution per hour is going to be 60, and the cost of a haircut they said is 1.5. Okay, and the haircut takes 1 hour. So this is throughput contribution per hour. That divided by conversion cost per hour, which is given as 42.56. So this is the first answer. Treatment 60, sorry, 110 minus 1.5. Then there is another 7.4 to be minused. So that is for 1.5 hours. So that's throughput contribution per hour for a treatment divided by again 42.56. So when I do this, I get 1.37. And when I do this, I get 1.58. And I get an answer of A for apple. Again, I'm going to clear this off. There seem to be some questions. I'll come back to it. Five, four, three, two. Oh, hold on. Salman wants to know from where I'm from. I'm from Sri Lanka, Salman. What does 50 stand for? What do we mean by theory of constraints in throughput? Theory of constraints is basically the limitation which causes the problem in the flow through or the throughput being constrained or restricted. Okay. What does 50 stand for? Can you, Hana, can you just re-stress on what that 50 is? Explain, repeat. I'm Shehan Fernando Salman. If the bottleneck is not given in the question, then how to calculate it? Yes, that's a good one. I'll come back to that because this question basically asks you for something like that. Okay. So Salman wants to know by name. Okay. So my name is Shehan Fernando. It's on the start of the PowerPoint just in case. Okay. Right. So I'm going to clear this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to move on. Uh, There's a very nice question. That's why I picked this up as well on figuring out what your throughput, what your uh, bottleneck is. 18th one. Which of the following activities could the salon use to improve the TPAR? Okay. So identify ways, increase the time spent. Okay. How do you improve your TPAR? So the TPAR is selling price minus direct material, direct labor plus overheads. No. So like what I said, to improve this, this has to go up or this has to come down. Or in other words, this has to go up, this has to come down. Okay. So what in this list talks about something similar to these aspects. Okay. Increase the time spent by the bottleneck activity on each service. That's not going to help. That's going to increase the bottom. Identify ways to reduce the material cost of the service. That's correct. This comes down. Increase the level of inventory to prevent stockouts. Throughput accounting is in line with JIT principles. So JIT principles tell us to reduce the stock level or probably eliminate it to begin with. Then 4, increase productivity of the stage prior to the bottleneck. So I must increase productivity of the bottleneck stage. Improve the control of the operating cost. This must come down. Operating cost must come down. So correct. Apply an increase in the selling price. Yes, there you are. So 2, 5, and 6 is answer C. Okay. Jump to question 20 a little bit. Okay. Which of the following statements regarding theory of constraints are correct? It focuses on identifying stages of congestion in a process when production arrives more quickly than the next stage can handle. Yes. Yeah. So basically, it focuses on where I get stuck. That's the constraint. So again, answering that question which was asked. It is based on the concept that organizations manage 3 key factors: throughput, operating expenses, and inventory. Perfectly right. So those are the 3 main aspects in throughput accounting. Uses a sequence of focusing steps to overcome a single bottleneck, at in which point the improvement process is complete. No, because once that's done, the next step says go through the whole process again to identify new bottlenecks. So this is like a never ending process. The process will never be complete. It can be applied to the management of all limiting factors, both internal and external, which can affect an organization. No, this is basically no, that's a big no. Okay. So not all limiting factors. So there can be certain external factors which I have no control over. Okay. So especially the external factors is not within the organization's control. So your answer is 1 and 2, A for apple. So last question is that question which focuses on finding the bottleneck. Okay. What would it doesn't look like a question like that. Okay. What would be the effect on the bottleneck if the salon employed another senior stylist? Okay. So what is going to be the bottleneck, in other words, if you employed another senior stylist? Seems to be some question. Okay. Yeah, okay. So the answer is provided. Yes. Okay. So for 18th one, C is right. Okay. So let me move on, erase all of this. So what if you hired another senior stylist is what they're asking me now. Okay. So let's go up. Okay. What's going to happen to the bottleneck? That's what they're asking me. Right. So we had a situation like this, no, at the moment. Okay, they said we have two senior stylists, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, and then we have 50 weeks. Okay, so sorry, we had three, apologies, three. So 3 into 8 into 6 into 50 is 7,200. And cut was 7,200 divided by 1, which is 7,200. 72 divided by 1.5 is the treatment, which is 48. That's that. Okay, fine. So you got to keep this in mind as well when we are trying to do what we're trying to do over here. Okay. So what they're saying is senior stylist, what if we have 4 now? 3 into, sorry, 4 into 8 into 6 into 50 gives me 9,600. So if I have 4 senior stylists, 9,600, 6 divided by 1, I'm getting 9,600 there. And for a treatment, 6 divided by 1.5, I'm gonna get 6,400. Okay, so junior stylist and assistants, they said we have 2 junior stylists and 2 assistants. So the junior stylist and assistants, 2 into 8 hours, 6 days a week, 50 weeks. That is 48. Cut and treatment. 48 over 1. No, hold on. 48 junior stylist is 0.6. Treatment is 48 divided by 0.5. 9,600. 48 over 0.6 is 8,000. For 8 assistant, 0.1 and 0.3 by the way. 0.1 is 48,000. 48.3 16,000. Okay, right. Listen carefully, everyone. So this is the new context. Leave this aside. So this is the existing context. Okay. Can I move this a little bit to be clearer? Right, that's better. So with the existing context, 7 to, let me get the highlighter, 7 to 8, 48, that was my problem. 48, 9, 6, 16, yes, that was my problem. So that was my bottleneck, and they said that senior stylist time have correctly been identified as the bottleneck. Now they are saying if we hire another fellow, now this is completely out. Compare these 3 and these 3. So if I take treatments, that's the lowest. But if I take haircuts, that's the lowest. So your senior stylist time is not the bottleneck anymore for haircuts, but junior stylist time becomes the bottleneck for haircuts. Okay. So on that note, if I am to go to my question, that is 19 there, maybe I'll come back up again. What would be the effect on the bottleneck if the salon employed another senior stylist? Senior stylist time will be the bottleneck for cuts only, no, for treatments only. So senior stylist time, bottleneck for treatments only. Answer B. So it's not for both anymore. Okay. No, the fourth answer is wrong. So B for boy is the correct answer for question 19. So question 19, B for boy. Okay, so we'll come back to that. So question 19, answer B for boy. So if you like, you can take this down while I take some questions. What are the main topics expected to cover a large portion of the exam? I'm sorry, Alvin, cannot say anything like that. Okay. Everything's important, but like what I said, I can say one question will come from performance based on all the past papers that has ever been tested. So if you can stress a little more on that, okay, but that doesn't mean you should ignore the others because that's going to come in the second section C question or probably section A and B. Salman, I haven't come to Pakistan. Yes, of course you can come to Sri Lanka. Thanks, Aisha. So if you like, you can take a screenshot of this. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 and clear it. Erase. Righto. That's done. So basically, guys, we have about 20 odd minutes. Okay. Let me go through a few exam tips for you. So subject matter is done. Okay. So ending tips, if you can remember, the start of the slide, I said something like that. Ending tips and questions. So we move on to the ending tips. Right. So you can ask questions, just hold on to the questions for a little bit. Okay. Right. This is a screenshot of basically the recent articles published on the ACCA page in connection to subject F5. Okay. So this was what I was telling. I think there was a doubt on environmental management accounting. There was a request for my notes. Okay. So this is actually a very comprehensive article. So if you can read that, that gives you a lot of insight on environmental management accounting. Okay. So transfer pricing, throughput accounting, learning rate, decision trees. Honestly, to tell you, you're not gonna, in my view, okay. So these are good to read, but then again, I believe even the suggested study material will cover a lot of information connected to some of these topics over here. Okay, so it's good to read, but you're not gonna gain anything additional mainly through these articles. Okay, but something like this, I would say, is very, very important. So that again, I've discussed most aspects of that. Okay, how do you tackle that performance evaluation question and get marks? Okay, so building block model. Okay, so we did a question on the first day itself. Okay, so this article also gives us some insight about about the building block model. Okay, and there's a question which is shared in the article as well. I've summarized that question. I hope you saw a take-home handout over there. Okay, so I'll come back to that take-home handout as well. Okay, decision trees. Okay, and so basically there's quite a few articles at the bottom. Okay, so if you can just go through, okay, mainly I would say go through this, okay, and maybe this, okay. So the others, okay, doesn't give you a big insight compared to what the approved publishers say in their textbooks, okay. There's some probably, if you see an article on time series, just ignore that. That is when it was the old syllabus, okay. And there's an article on risk and uncertainty, okay. If you go down, that article talks about a standard deviation and all, nothing lost in if you look at it, okay. So technical articles, just to let you know, I tell my students, okay, just in case your tutor doesn't tell you or probably someone doesn't remind you, keep in mind a technical article is a testable document when it comes to the ACCA exam, okay. So especially when it comes to all ACCA subjects, just keep that in mind, not necessarily F5, okay, right. So then let me clear this and move on to the next slide. Have a plan. Today is Valentine's Day, the 14th of Feb. You have uh, about 19 days for the exam. Okay. So just have a schedule as to what you're going to do on those 19 days. Okay. Plan it out. These days I will be studying and finish going through the syllabus. Then allocate a time for question practice. And that can be further broken down into two pieces. Question practice in terms of section A and section B, question practice in terms of section C, where you probably can try it on the platform itself. Okay. We didn't go to the platform today. Why? Section A doesn't require you to go to the platform. It's just MCQ questions. Okay. So again, quickly go through the syllabus, do questions, past paper questions mainly, or probably, which is again past paper questions to a certain extent, to a great extent. What am I talking about? Approved publishers exam kits. Okay. And if you're thorough with this, I don't see any reason where you need to go anything beyond that. But like what I said, you need to have some hands-on experience on the platform. Okay. Some words from the examiner. One key reason why the candidates weren't, there were some questions, I'll come back guys, weren't able to gain full credit for their work on discussion questions. All of us have a problem in the discussion questions, okay. uh, if there's someone who wishes to say, okay, if you actually analyze, okay, this discussion element can be only about 20 marks out of 100 if you really think about it, because 60 marks is section A and B, no discussions there. Then I said 20 because there's two questions, 40 marks, probably half of it is a discussion, so that's the 20 I was referring to. So the examiner sadly focuses on this 20 a lot, okay, while ignoring the other 80. But I'm not blaming him, because see, the other 80 will be purely knowledge and you getting it right. For example, they ask you to compute a mixed variance. If you know to get it, you get the 2 marks, or probably if it's a big question, 3 to 4 marks. If you don't know how to get it, you just get probably no marks at all if it's a section A B question. Okay. So number one reason why a student fails: lack of knowledge. So do whatever is necessary, okay, to get the knowledge into your heads, and make sure it stays in your heads, and make sure you can extract the necessary knowledge when it comes to that 3 hours and 20 minutes at the exam. Okay, right. This took two main forms. Firstly, overlooking the second part of the requirement, It's worth spending time reading the requirement really carefully and ensuring you've covered all parts of it before you move on. Secondly, not addressing the verb in the requirement. Okay. So I stressed on the verb. I'll come back to this verb. I have something there on the verb. Okay. So read the question, answer what they are asking. Okay. And answer what they are asking, taking into consideration the verb. One example this sitting was the question asking candidates to explain advantages and disadvantages of performance measures. Explain. The majority simply listed. Okay, so then they will say list advantages, disadvantages. When they say explain, why did you list? Okay, perfectly valid. Okay, but it was hard to award credit for these answers as they did not as they did not address the requirement. An explanation would expand on the statement, often with a because, to explain why it is the case. So take these little things into account, guys. This is exam tips, exam technique. Okay, another reason why students fail. The reverse is true. For example, briefly comment is looking for one or two short sentences. If you write half a page of valid commentary, you'll have picked up the maximum marks available, but wasted time that could have been spent on other questions. So you're writing half a page. When they say briefly comment, you'll get the marks, but as they said, you're wasting a lot of time. Okay. So this is again another thought to keep in mind. Let me clear that off and move on to the next slide. So summary again, why do we fail? Lack of knowledge. Please put every piece of your syllabus into your heads, guys. Improper exam technique, like what I said just now, read the verb. Make sure that you give the reason for the explanation, not necessarily say gross profit has gone up or come down, this is good. Those aspects that we discussed. Do not use the calculator to do the workings on the CBE platform. Show the workings on the platform itself. Be thorough with how to use the CBE platform. Don't just walk in there with not having a proper idea of uh, what tools are available and what they will do for you. Focus on all areas of the syllabus and all sections in the paper. I said, do not cherry pick, do not select areas. At the exam, don't say, let me focus on the big questions only or the MCQs only. Revisit areas you struggled with during your learning phase. That's something that I also regularly did. So when you're studying sometimes, okay, now, in my case, I remember I was quite good at variances. So when I do it once, it's actually in my head. But then again, I too wasn't too great in terms of the performance section of the syllabus. Okay. So in terms of the performance section, I used to mark certain areas and again go through them till it sort of went to my head. Okay. So a little bit of advice there. Not reading the requirement carefully, the verb, the number of subparts. I was stressing on the subparts through the balance scorecard question and the building block question. Get me a goal, a measure, and tell me why. So if you don't address all three, no full marks. Okay. In terms of the verb, okay, you have access to this. Copy it, paste it. Sorry, that didn't work out properly. So ACCA itself tells you what these verbs mean. Advise, analyze, apply, assess. So please answer based on the verb. So list several ideas, aspects. Don't discuss, just make a list. So don't go into depth. Okay. Recommend, give advice. Okay. State, explain precisely, focus on the exact point. Don't go into depth when they say state. Okay. But when you go into things like, as you can see, discuss, write about any conflict, compare and contrast, analyze, give reasons for the current situation or what has happened. Okay. So go through these a little bit. Okay. Don't waste your time too much on this. This is not subject matter, but you need to have an idea of what the exact requirement is. Not extracting the necessary from the question. That is also another weakness. When you're writing the explanatory answers, pull out pointers that they give in the question. Okay. So if you can remember our question on car valeting, okay, why was I able to get more business? A competitor burnt down. The country's economy is not too great. People don't have enough money in their hands, not enough money to eat and drink. So are you going to buy new cars? No. So you have no option but to maintain the cars. That too, not going in for a full valet, but for a mini valet. Where did I get all of this information from? The question told me all of that. Okay. So extract those details from the question when you are trying to get the answer. Okay. Time management issues, 1.8 minutes per mark, if you can remember. Okay. uh, Final tip. Okay. What if you're unsure of the answer, especially with an MCQ? Okay. So let's say you have an MCQ. Okay. The take home handout as well. Let me quickly open that. And the other also, I will need it. Yeah. So I'm just saying, okay. So we had this question on the throughput accounting. I just want to tell you something like this. Okay. Uh, okay. So we have four answers. No? Okay. Let me go there. Okay. Right. Okay. So let's say this is like a question where I have to pick a theory answer. Okay. Right. Now I am reading this question. Okay. Uh, I am completely lost. Okay. I have no idea what the answer is going to be. Pick something, mark it, and proceed. My advice. Okay. But on somewhere on the side, just say question 19. Keep that in mind. Let's say, so I said, let's say you read the question and you know it's not B, you know it's not D, but you're having a big doubt in terms of A or C. Okay. Mark C or A, again write the question number and proceed. Don't not mark. Don't not mark. Mark something and proceed. Okay. Your thought will be, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure if C is right. Okay. You can always come back and adjust it if you think A is right. Okay. Many have told me, so we didn't have time to come back and do it. At least statistically, you have a 50% chance of getting this right if you mark and proceed. So therefore, please make sure you mark and proceed if you are unsure of the answer. Okay. And another thing is, now you read this completely, okay, and then realized that this is not correct, this is not correct, one of these two is the answer. After reading the whole thing, you realize it. So if you keep it
and then say, let me come back to this later on, okay, do you realize that you have to read the whole thing again? You think this is in your heads? No chance. Okay. And you need more time for it as well. Okay. Which we don't have at the exam. So therefore, if you're unsure of the answer, please make sure you mark something and proceed. This is my advice to you. Okay. Lastly, few aspects. Okay. This is what ACCA says. Identify where the exam hall is, plan the route, basically give consideration for potential traffic, etc. uh, have in place a backup plan just in case of traffic. So if your exam center is too far away, I would advise you to come and stay in a friend's house or relative's house who sort of lives close to the exam, okay, exam center. Ensure you have all the equipment, including the examination docket, pens, calculators, etc. Okay. Eat properly. Some people don't eat. Sleep properly. Okay. These are little aspects, but trust me, it can play a role at the exam. There are people who just don't eat and sleep and fall asleep at the exams, probably faint at the exam. You're not going to get extra time if that happens. Try not to get into discussions with students before the exam. Okay, that'll make you panic even more. Okay, if you're taking a CBE exam, okay, look at the necessary videos. Once it's over, relax. Don't overanalyze. You cannot change anything right now. Okay, right. So that concludes Shehan's session. We have 4 minutes. Any questions? There are some. Okay, right. There are a few actually. Let me hope I can touch on all of this. Okay, right. Aisha says excellent explanations. Thank you. Important tips. I just gave you some, I believe. Thank you for your interpretation. Throughput is easier for me now. Great, Hannah. Good to know that. Where can I get the handout link of previous revision webinars for March 2019? So that if it's my subject, just drop me a mail. I'll just write my email address. Yeah, so another thing which you have with you right now, I'll come back to the questions, is this handout. Okay, so take home handout, I call it. Okay, so basically I've put some areas where you can try some past paper questions. Let's say you're studying and you want to do some linear programming question. There you go. Okay, so in addition to that, what you have over there is, this is from that article of that building block model which I was talking to you about. Okay, so they talk about take a question. So it's actually worthwhile going through it. And also this is on from that article which I have summarized. So if you don't go through the articles and if you go through these two, it's actually fine, because I've summarized and put down the important tips from those two articles for you. So tackling performance evaluation questions. So go for the easy marks first, deciding what to calculate, understand the one figure rule, so certain aspects, and more importantly, so what are the common mistakes and how to avoid it. Okay, so that's understandable once you read it. So I would advise you to go through that as well. Okay. Uh, okay, so in terms of, yeah, so then there is a question on, by the way, let me put down my email address for you. Okay, and then after that move into uh, so it's poolavstreety@gmail.com, right? So is F5 easier than F9? Depends on different individuals' preferences. Okay, so in my point of view, yes, because I like this subject. Do I have to pass each section of? No, individually? No, you need a total of 50 marks. Okay, how much should we write when the verb requirement is briefly explained? Okay, that depends on the mark allocation, Aisha. Okay, I generally say if it's 5 marks on a normal answer booklet, okay, uh, it's probably half a page to three-quarter page maximum. So if you can, with normal handwriting, if you can do something like that and come up with a word count, yeah, so then I guess something like that is what they're expecting. If I get 80% in A and 20% A and B and 20% in C, do I fail? No, nothing like that. Overall, you need 50%. Kindly share your email address. Yes, there you go. So sometimes I press in one cell in the workspace, then left click the number in another cell. The cell with number cannot be copied, so I have to type in the number. There is a small issue in the constructed response workspace ha. So therefore, don't worry about that. It should work at the exam perfectly well. Okay. Thanks, it says. Can you guide about CBE errors? I'm not too sure what that question means. Okay. What actions we take about that? Okay. Uh, so basically, like what I said, only the cell reference is an issue. Thank you for the beautiful webinar. You're welcome. Where to practice section A and section B besides specimen paper, past paper questions, as well as like what I said, Adele, you can look at the exam kits, at which portal you're going to share these tips, suggestions, notes. There's no portal. Okay, you can talk to me and I'll give you the necessary handouts. This is my email address. You're welcome, Jawahir, Tasneem, and Sheer. How should we solve discussion questions, paragraphs, bullet points? Discussion, more likely paragraphs. Okay, so glad this was helpful for you. Patience. Atif, you're welcome, guys. Amir, you're welcome. Thank you. And I think time's running out. Okay. All the best. Please pass. Put in your effort. Keep in touch with me. Okay. Thank you for participating. Okay. I love you all. Please pass somehow. Okay. All the best, guys. This time you're definitely going to pass the guys who failed it before. So keep in mind, keep in touch with me if you have any information. Okay. So good night. Thank you again for participating. I hope to see you, probably not in a F5 webinar, but then again, probably to have a chat with you someday through email or something like that. Okay. So thanks, guys. Okay. Good night. Take care. All the best. Pass the exam.